And one of the investors came and said, Dylan, I'm about to get 5 apartments. What am I going to do with 5 apartments? I live in Israel. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to do this. Go find me someone to manage. When you start a business, there's no way to do it. The way that I've learned most was making mistakes and just learning along the way that 8% of workers are currently working in Midtown right now. For right now, with housing courts still being suspended, they just extended the eviction moratorium for another month into September. Landlords have to realize the position that they're in. I need a reduction because I unfortunately blew all your rent money on this beach house.
I represent about 275 to 300 owners individually myself. I've been blessed where 100% of my tenants have paid.
I made you look. You a slave to a page in my rhyme book. Getting big money.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Real Takk. I'm so sorry. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus since my last podcast, which was right before phase 2. If you haven't listened to those last 2 episodes, go ahead and jump in and check them out. The most recent episode was with Amir Karangi, who is the founder, CEO, and operator of The Real Deal, which is the biggest real estate industry centered and focused publication for New York and LA and Miami and Chicago, actually. And today, I'm extremely proud and happy to have on board Dylan. Dylan, can you pronounce me your last name again?
It's actually pronounced Pichulik.
Pichulik. So yes. I'm extremely happy to have on board Dylan Pichulik. Dylan Pichulik is the founder and CEO of XL Property Management, which is a leading New York City property management firm that specializes in managing the assets of co-ops and condos owned by individual and institutional investors throughout the world. So he represents investors from upstate New York, Long Island, all the way out to China. His real estate background started at the ripe young age of 18. Well, while he was a student at NYU, he worked as a real estate agent at City Habitats under the guidance of my current manager, Gordon Gallo. After a stint in being a broker, he joined the City Habitats marketing group, which represents some of their larger clients at the time. Dylan was responsible in overseeing the management of the 34th Street Herald Towers. Dylan then decided to go deep dive into property management, and he actually joined one of the investors of Herald Towers, now called HFZ Capital Group, operated by a guy named Zeal Feldman. He's one of the more influential people in our world. At the HFC Capital Group, Dylan managed about several million square feet of condominium and new development space throughout New York City. Their project includes the Bell Nord, One Madison, Devon Condo, 45 Wooster. They also have the Tempo, and I think their newest project is called the Bryant on 42nd Street. And Dylan, in present time, manages units in Gold Coast addresses. Some of you may know 15 Central Park West, 111 West 57th Street, the Plaza Hotel, which is 1 Central Park South, the Ritz on Central Park South, Time Warner Center, 1 Madison Park, 432 Park, all the way up to obviously some of the more common, those are the common addresses, but he also manages tons of other addresses that are not considered Gold Coast, but are more, let's just say, quote unquote affordable in New York City, such as 404 East 76th Street, and maybe we'll talk a few more addresses once we go deep dive into this show. Dylan lives with his wife, a 1-year-old child, and a 60-pound golden doodle. You may follow Dylan on Instagram at Dylan Pichulik, DYLAN PICHULIK, and follow his company's website, www.xl-rpm.com. XL-R as in rabbit, P as in property, M as in management.com. So Dylan, welcome. Thanks for joining, and I appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, Takk. It's a pleasure to see you today.
Yeah, no, I gotta say, just to start off, going back, the first time I met you was at Urban Compass about 8 years ago when you came and visited, and Gordon is always so nice, man. He's the man. He's always so high on, your business and what you do, and he thought that maybe you could help me, on various levels. And so it's been a wild ride in 8 years, huh?
I can't believe it. I still remember going to see the first Urban Compass office over on Broome Street or over in Soho.
Spring Street.
And it was very much like cooperative together startup, and you guys had the pool table and there. So it's just, it's been an inspiration to me to watch Compass grow and see that there is hope for great growth in this world just by watching, Urban Compass go from Compass and watch it slowly take over the entire landscape of the United States at this point.
Yeah, I'm sure, same on your part. I mean, you've seen, I remember seeing your company on the New York Times in like 2011 or 12. And since then, I mean, you guys had an insane growth spurt on your end too.
Yeah, we got incredibly lucky. Excel officially launched back in February of 2012. And the reason I started it actually is I was working for HFZ Capital Group, and we were the lender of the Satire Wall Street. The initial developer defaulted. HFZ came in, recapitalized him. So we served as the lender on the property. And the reason I started it is this was back in the boom where foreign investors started buying in large volume here in the city.
Yeah.
And so we hit the market at the right time, just as the foreign investor story became very sexy. And through a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, we developed this great model, which has been a tremendous assistance to the real estate community. Because one of the reasons we started is we said, look, you can go find a building manager, but you can't find someone to manage an individual apartment. And we found that the brokerage community were serving as de facto property managers. And, that's a complete inefficiency. Brokers don't get paid extra to manage, and a lot of, sub-zero, it's more of a customer service giveaway. And some brokers were better at it than others. But I saw one by one brokers kind of getting slaughtered and walking themselves into situations because they found the wrong insurance policy for the owner. And I said, look, there's got to be a better way. Broker doesn't have time to do this. The best way to be successful in life is to specialize in what you do best. And if you focus on what you do best, that's where you see ultimate prosperity. And if a broker is trying to arrange for PC Richards to, fix a dishwasher in the most bureaucratic condo you can find, there goes basically 2 days of your time. Are you going to make money from it by fixing the dishwasher? Or could you have hustled 2 or 3 rentals in that period of time? So we said, look, there's got to be a third party that does this. We have the right pedigree to do it with my development background and my marketing background from City Habitats. Let's go really make a true splash in the market and help everybody in the process.
When you started out, did you start out with representing all of HFC's units, or did you just have a set of clients that you wanted to work with, on your own in the beginning? What was your beginning like?
So the beginning was, we very much started in true startup fashion. Excel at one point was actually run from under my desk at HFZ. And the reason we started it is HFZ had a group of investors that were buying into buildings. And one of the investors came into my office. I oversaw a lot of the projects for HFZ. And one of the investors came and said, Dylan, I'm about to get 5 apartments. What am I going to do with 5 apartments? I live in Israel. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to do this. Go find me someone to manage. So we literally scoured the city at the time. And this was back in 2011 when we started the initial research. And we found one company that managed individual units at the time. Mm-hmm. And so we went to go meet with that company. And I'm like, this is never going to fly with one of these big $100 million guys. They need someone serious, focused, with a real program that really is a true expert in these asset classes. So I remember I went home after that meeting, or back to my office, and it was about 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. I was sitting in my office in Madison Avenue, I'm sure underwriting a deal or something for Zeal. And I said, you know what, maybe I'll do it. And let's see what happens. And the initial exploration was walking around, and I met with all the condo managers in the city to see what they thought. And one by one, every property manager in New York laughed to my face and said, ha, how are you going to make money? Literally every single one said, you are absolutely psycho. You're going to manage one apartment at a time? How are you going to do it? And, a normal person would have been defeated and said, maybe these guys are right. These are people who've been in the business for 20 or 30 years. But at the time I said, my eyes are going to bleed out if I have to make one more Excel spreadsheet on a real estate deal. And I said, you know what? I was 26, 27 at the time. What do I have to lose? I didn't have real expenses at the time. I wasn't married and had a baby like now. I said, if I'm ever going to do something, it's got to be right now. And, we started off running it under the desk and slowly, started with a couple of HFZ investors, and it really caught wind from there.
Oh, great. Right. Yeah. It's true. You can't wait for the perfect conditions to start a business, right? You just have to get started and hopefully you make the conditions yourself down the road. I think I heard a quote like that one time. So
well, that's it. I mean, at some point you've got to look. It's like going and diving off the diving board. You're either going to jump or not, and you can stand on that diving board your whole life, or you go, you know what? People have done this before. They've dived into pools before, and it worked out. Let me go and see what happens. And worst case, maybe my mom will take me back. But luckily, we didn't have to cross that bridge.
Speaking of your mom, where are you from originally?
She grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. And I moved to New York because I went to NYU.
Yeah. What did you study at NYU? Not property management, obviously.
Not property management. I had an uncle who was a developer, and that was kind of the reason I started in real estate, because I remember he was driving around in his car and doing what developers get to do, and most are kind of, cowboys and rough around the edges. And I said, wow, you could actually be raw, have this kind of like, gunslinging, profession and be well respected and successful at it. So he kind of got me interested in real estate. But I actually studied politics, economics, and German, believe it or not.
Oh, cool. Maybe so that helps with your German investors, probably.
It does, although no one, at this point I'm so, removed from it that if I try to speak to them in German, they immediately respond to me in English. They're like, we're not even going to bother.
Stop. You're being disrespectful to my culture.
Yeah, it was cute when you said hello, but after that, let's just talk in English.
And you and I, we're all on the same page in terms of being business owners, in the startup field and kind of being able to create your own business. It's always an uphill battle. What were some of your losses that you've taken earlier in your career that you hopefully learned from, while building up Excel Property Management?
That was probably one of the hardest things for me. I was always a perfectionist, and I wanted everything to be done seamlessly, and I wanted to look like an expert. But when you start a business, there's no way to do it other than jumping in. And the way to learn is not by doing it the right way. The way that I learned most was making mistakes and just learning along the way. And, all of the things that, when we first started, we had no infrastructure. We had no management software. I was literally running it from under my desk. And it was all those mistakes that were made and failure to present properly, things like that really got us on the right track, because you'll learn 10 times quicker from a mistake than you will from a success.
Of course, yeah, that's totally true. So let's get into today's topic. We're basically in the midst of a pandemic. When back in March 15th, when the city shut down, I think my mentality was, we'll get through this by the summer. The temperatures will rise. We'll probably be better. The pandemic will probably just spread in New York City and not the rest of the United States. I don't think the rest of the markets will be affected. Fast forward, today is August 8th. I mean, we're kind of still, I don't know if there's even a second, I don't even know if we're near the end of the first wave. I don't even know if there is a second wave coming in, and that they've been saying there's a second wave coming in the fall. The market is drastically different than where I thought I was going to be back when I thought back in March 15th, where we thought this might be kind of like a 6-month thing. It's drastically different both on the sales and market end. And we'll just talk about New York City rentals today, because that's kind of, we want to focus on that. Inventory level is at an all-time high. A little bit about an article that was published last week, first week of August. I was published by the New York Times, and the title was "The Virus Turns Midtown into a Ghost Town, Causing an Economic Crisis." I'll get the link out in my Instagram story a little later, but just my few takeaways from that article, right? We have 7,500 workers at an office building in 1271 6th Avenue. It's right by Radio City Music Hall, formerly known as the Time Life Building. Houses about 7,500 to 8,000 employees in that one building. And according to the report, the day that they measured the number of workers going in, they only counted about 500. There's a food cart that sits directly in front of Radio City Music Hall, who formerly sells about 400 hot dogs a day. And now he's told the reporter that he only sells about 10 hot dogs a day. Rockefeller Center subway station, we all know. I mean, many of us have commuted there oftentimes. I was there. I went to have lunch at the Rainbow Room right before the right in the fall before the pandemic, and I remember going up and down the stairs. But in any event, it's a major subway station that runs 4 major train lines run underneath it. It's a major hub for not just Queens going into Midtown, but also downtown going into Midtown. We got 4 train stations underneath. Last year, June 24th, 62,312 turnstile swipes were recorded at the station. And then on a comparable Monday this year, June 22nd, the number of swipes was 8,032. So that's a staggering 87% decrease in swipes. You know, they say New York City survived the 70s, and everybody thought the city was over. And then rampant crime and landlords were near bankruptcy, businesses were falling apart. And then we survived the market crash of 87 and 89 and the dot-com crash of 2000, and it survived the financial crisis of 2008. I don't want to sound totally negative, but this pandemic is different. This is not a financial crisis. We're not talking about financial wherewithal. We're talking life and death. Like Chris Okada, one of my guests said, he said, what struck me was, he said, we're dealing with life or death situations where people's health are in jeopardy on a long-term, prolonged basis, unlike a terrorist threat or Sandy or Lehman Brothers or the dot-com bust. So where we are right now is in a historical moment where I'm sure we'll get out of it, but nobody knows how long this is going to last and if we will ever get out of it or recover fully. I mean, this time around, I'm thinking this is different. So, I know I talked a lot. Now, Dylan, just let's switch it back to you. What do you think about this overall time frame that we're in right now? And how do you think, what do you think is in the future for us?
Great. Yeah, to add to what you're saying, I read, I think it was in Business Insider or one of these publications. I think they said that 8% of workers are currently working in Midtown right now. So of the 100% that are typically here, literally 8%. And I feel that completely. We're right smack dab in the middle of Midtown. Our office is on the corner of 56 and Madison.
Oh, yeah.
Our entire building is vacant. There's 20 other companies on our floor alone because we're in a big tower, and we're one of 3 that are actually here. You go downstairs, there's stores open, but any lunch crowd or business lunch crowd restaurant is closed.
Yeah.
The diners are closed. The delis are closed, dishes where we always would eat lunch. I don't think they've opened back yet. So it's definitely a different environment, and it's scary. And probably the most embarrassing part of this is remembering how naive I was. That I think it was March 7th. It was the Friday when everybody realized that things were about to get real. And we had all this oh, maybe it's real, maybe it's not real, and maybe it just happened in China and they weren't prepared and it will be fine here. But I remember, I think it was March 7th. It was a Friday. And that was the day that everybody's like, oh my God, we have a problem right now. And I remember shaking hands with my coworker or fist bumping her mother before we left.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks, I guess. We're going to take a little 2-week hiatus. I remember I had this headset that I speak on, I work at AT&T or something, because I'm on the phone a lot. I'm like, all right, I should bring this home, and because I have calls, I don't want to make my wife upset with all the yelling and screaming, so, because somebody's on speaker, I'll bring my headset. I just feel so dumb now, especially as somebody who had so many Chinese clients, and Korean and Japanese, and they had all been through this, starting in December. So they would tell stories that's like, yeah, that's not going to happen here. That's not going to happen here. You're crazy. The United States will know what to do. It'll be fine. And then you start hearing the reports from Italy, and that's where got all the New Yorkers scared. Because we're like, okay, Asia's one thing, China, they were surprised by it. They didn't know what to do. By the time it makes it to the West, people will be fine. And then you start seeing all the reports from the Italians that were completely quarantined. And they're like, wait, the West doesn't know how to deal with this. And that's finally what got everybody to understand this is real. And it's like you said, a matter of life and death. But look, on the pandemic, we're in a really hard time. The silver lining, I think, in this pandemic is we have, although we don't know the end date of this, it wasn't caused by the economy. It was caused by an external factor that presumably, whether it's 3 months from now, probably not, but hopefully, or a year from now or 2 years from now, we'll have the pandemic figured out and there will be some sort of recovery. The questionable thing is we have a lot of other external factors going on outside of that can influence our recovery. We have a big election coming up in what, 3 months? 4 months in November. We have economic, we're already having economic, not hardship, but there was a lot of speculation about what the economy is going to do starting back before the pandemic started. So the reassuring thing for me is walking the streets today. I live in Greenwich Village, and there's a bar called Fiddlesticks. I don't know if you're familiar.
Of course. I used to love Fiddlesticks.
My wife and I kept them in business through the pandemic. I mean, because they were one of the first ones in our neighborhood to start the to-go drinks.
Oh, good.
But we have to support local business, even if that means we start drinking at 12 every day. I mean, we don't want them to close. It's our moral obligation.
That's a great bar, too. Yeah.
I love it there.
It's such an NYU bar. It's so you.
It reminds me of home. I mean, unfortunately, I went to NYU and I somehow never left because NYU is basically West 4th, West 8th, and I live on West 11th, so I'm still pretty much NYU mode. But like I said, the promising thing is there will be a termination date to this crisis. What other external factors what other external factors are going to, either speed up or slow the recovery, we don't know. But one thing that I do know, and, we were out of the city a lot in July. We luckily rented a house before the pandemic started because nobody could afford to rent a house after it started.
Where did you go?
We were in the Hamptons, and, luckily we rented something in early February. We're like, let's go away for a month. We got a few friends together, some of our, family friends, and we rented a house. And I'm like, good thing we did that in February because after that, the market, I have a client who has a house. We rent from her a lot up there. I mean, she's getting 3 times what she got last year. It's literally insane. It's like, you've got to, how can you justify the expense? But I digress on that. But one thing I do want to say is, I was traveling on 495, going out east, and I said, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could be a commuter, It'd be a great life. My baby can play in the backyard, and the dog can run around. Yeah. And literally it took me 3 minutes to be like, are you on drugs? Like, there's no way you're going to go to the suburbs. And we spent, the month there, although I'm crazy, so I was back and forth most days. And I said, there is no way I could do it. And, for the motivated and the tough, where are you going to move besides Manhattan? Where are you going to live?
Best city in the world.
Really? Are you going to go? Look, I know, I've done you what? It was 10 years already. Are you going to go sit in the suburbs? Like, I couldn't imagine you doing, like all these people like, oh, New York is over and forget it. But no. First of all, there's still a lot of people here, and you see even celebrities on Instagramming from Manhattan. There's a great energy even right now. But when schools open up, people are coming back. And the one thing that all of our tenants are saying across the board, because Excel carries a lot of higher-end large properties, is it's based on schools. They left, but all of our tenants are just dying to come back. They're just waiting for the announcement that schools are coming back, so they have a reason.
Yeah. So let's talk about schools, and you bring two points that you brought up: schools, and obviously the energy of New York City. Why do people live here from the get-go? Why do people want to live in a high-rent, high-priced city with you share 200 square feet between 2 people almost? And why do people tolerate that? So I think those 2 points we should touch on. Schools first. We have clients on my end that I represent where their initial thought process was, why would I pay, $50,000 a year to take my kid to Dalton if the chances of them just going to school on Zoom is 70%, 60%. And even at best, it might be 1 week on, 1 week off, and it'll still be Zoom. Why won't I take my kids to Denver, Colorado, or Aspen, or maybe Maine or Vermont? There's some big transactions happening right now in those markets. And it makes sense from their perspective. We're just going to camp out, quote unquote, for a year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, until things settle back. But what you just said might be true. You know, there is a vanity of living in New York City. So eventually they're dying to come back, but they're trying to come back. What are your thoughts on the impacts of the market in the short term if schools are, you know, where schools in New York City right now, as of now, is basically 50% capacity?
Yeah, I mean, that's been something that keeps me up at night since literally March. And what are they going to announce about schools in the fall? Because right now we're doing okay. And, you know, even on the rental activity, which I'm sure we'll address a little bit in more detail in this call, even with rental activity, you know, it's definitely not as strong as it once was, but we're renting apartments.
Yeah.
But, you know, what's going to happen when the decision is made, by the way, we're not coming back. You know, for the fall, it's going to be Zoom only. And I'm hoping it's at least a hybrid model, because that'll still convince a lot of people to stay away and just take the remote learning option, while still allowing like the tried and true New Yorkers to be here and have no, you know, real reason to leave. But I think that's the single biggest determining factor in what's going to happen in our market in the short term. What's going to happen with schools. And yeah, all the scenarios they're presenting are not ideal. How a working parent goes from having their kid home 1 week to school the next week, I don't know how they're going to juggle that. But I'm literally praying every night that there is some decision to keep people from just completely fleeing, because there will be you know, in my opinion, you know, quite an exodus of people who are holding out hope that school is coming back and they're still here. That might be the decision for them to say, okay, we're going to Denver, we'll rent a house for a few $1,000s a month, and we'll come back in a year. You know, it could have really negative implications for our market if that happens.
You know, it's the work from home culture that is driving these families out of Manhattan. And, you know, I mean, I just said Aspen and Denver because in like Vermont, because I've seen some seriously big transactions that go down out there, which traditionally, you know, is always kind of slow. Like the bigger markets, the more expensive Aspen, Vail, Telluride markets traditionally was slow leading up to 2020. But then ever since the pandemic began, you know, lots of trades are happening, and it's kind of been like the all-time high. And again, maybe I'm just speaking on a very small demographic of buyers that can afford the 4 million plus homes. But, you know, with the work from home culture being so rampant, I am seeing lots of homeowners and tenants, especially with children, just move it out to New Jersey or Long Island, or, you know, they're just vacating Manhattan for the time being because they can, because it's work from home. And this goes back to the office. You know, the reason why 90% of your office is vacant. People don't need to be in New York anymore. And not to sound pessimistic, but, you know, that combined with the vanity of, yes, Fiddlesticks is open at 25%. You know, the vanity of nightlife is gone. The vanity of restaurants are gone. The vanity of the arts, the music, the events, whether it's networking events or clubs, like organizations, not nightclubs, organizations, those are all gone. So the vanity of New York City has disappeared. So yes, schools are important, like you said, but I also think it's, you know, the work, however long this work from home situation, because people that even don't have the kids, like they'll just rent a house in the Hamptons for a year, live out there for a year. The whole vanity of living in New York City has diminished. And I think while schools are important, it's the matter of when are we coming back to life, right? I think that's more of a bigger indicator of how the health of our real estate market is going to be.
Well, and that's true as well, because look, if you take the restaurants away, if you take Broadway away, if you take the concerts away, I mean, you've taken everything away. You've taken away, you know, for those that don't have kids, you've taken away all the reason to be here in a lot of ways. Although temporarily, and one good thing about the summer is it's warm outside. So if you go to, you know, Greenwich Avenue, where we live, it's filled with, you know, jazz bands on this. I mean, it's really a great energy.
Yeah, I know, I love it.
You know, and I'm glad that this is going to kind of stay a little bit. You know, they're announcing that restaurants will be able to do the same things next summer as well. But you've taken away people's purpose for being here.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that we do have some solution soon, or at least news that a real vaccine is on the way and will be, you know, kind of our cure-all, because, you know, without that, you've taken everybody's reason. You know, schools aren't back and the restaurants are closed. Why would you be here?
Yeah. What's the reason?
You know, and I think another big topic is people talk about work from home and everybody's going to work from home. I'm a small business owner. I hate work from home. Like, Sorry, no problem with my chair. But you can't. Sorry, one thing. My chair broke on me. But how long can employers do this? Because there's nothing can replace the in-office interactions you have where things flow 5 times faster. Because if you have a question, you scream it across the room and you have an immediate answer. It's not like an employee dodging your phone call, waiting for a commercial break so they can, take your call between, Gossip Girl or whatever they're watching. There's a lot of lethargy that's already started with employers and employees on work from home because how many Zoom meetings can you sit on? I remember at first there was a million Zoom meetings and you could fill your entire day with Zoom meetings. How many do you have now? Like it's been severely reduced. Everybody got sick of it. The efficiency went down and it's scary as an employer to have employees that are working from home. Like you're no longer a unit anymore.
Nope.
And there's a lot of importance with a company to have cohesion and good relationships with your employees. Like Zoom takes away all the small talk and all the camaraderie and things like this. You can't replace it. And I know that I speak to a lot of business owners and we're all on the same page. Maybe we'll get by this period from work from home, but I don't think it's going to be this life altering thing where all of a sudden everybody says, okay, I don't need offices anymore. Everybody can work from home. I mean, how much less efficient are you at home? And my thing is, I probably operated about 40% capacity at home.
Yeah. There's my friend Chris Okada, who was a guest on my show too. He's a big time commercial guy, but he said it best. Nothing replaces the energy of being in the bullpen.
Nothing does, and the excitement. You can't replace it, and just the efficiency. So look, some jobs you can do better than others, but even being in the Hamptons for the short amount of time that we were there, you lose all the energy, you lose the traction, you've removed yourself completely from your focus.
Yep, 100%.
And that can't be good for a company.
100%. Let's talk about the rental market now, since I don't want to take up too much of your time. I track it pretty much on a daily, weekly, bi-weekly basis since early July. But since phase 2 opened, we were at about 16,000 vacancies just in Manhattan, not Brooklyn. Now, speaking to Gordon, Gordon said phase 3, which was probably late July, Gordon and I were talking, and he was saying, in like 1994, we hit 20,000 vacancies. And that was probably the biggest amount of vacancies that New York has seen since they City Habitats kind of started tracking it. City Habitats was always kind of like the leader in the rental market in the early mid to late 90s, early 2000s, right? So what Gordon was saying was, if we hit 20,000, then those will be really historical numbers. So fast track on July 22nd, 2020, we surpassed 20,000. We were at 20,594 vacancies. And then 2 days later, we hit almost 21,000. So we jumped about 400 more vacancies, and we almost hit 21,000 units of vacancy. Fast track to let's just go into August. Last week, August 3rd, 2020, we hit 21,762 vacancies in Manhattan. Wow. As well as I do, leases turn over at the end of the month, right? Most leases end at the end. Some brokers will start marketing before, but because of COVID, maybe these won't start marketing as, you don't want, if you were a renter, you don't want 20 people coming into your house 2 weeks before you're about to move out, especially with COVID going on. So I figured, from July 27th, at the end of the month, I recorded 20,933. This is all of Street Easy, by the way, vacancies on Street Easy. So 27th, on July 27th, we recorded 20,933 vacancies. And then the following weekend, that Monday, 21,762. So over the weekend, we hit about another 1,000 and change, 1,000 and change more vacancies in Manhattan. Fast forward to today, we're at 22,477 vacancies. So, this is surpassing what Gordon saw in the mid-90s. This is surpassing what anyone has seen since data has really been tracking the rental figures just in Manhattan. We're at record high numbers. These are record numbers that we have never seen. Now, when Gordon was in business in the 90s tracking these numbers, he said, well, landlords back then would give 2, 3, 4 months in rental incentives, free rent to get these apartments rented. I think now we're at a point where our analytics are so advanced and our tracking systems are so advanced, and we can see the data and we can see the people's traffic flow, that we don't have to do that as much as maybe people in the 90s did. We're just more efficient, but we're still at a point where we are giving away, we are basically just forced to give away so much in incentives to get these properties filled. What are you seeing in the market today? And then I guess the biggest question is, what do you do with tenants that are being difficult during these times of extremely high vacancies, and how are you managing the crisis?
Perfect. Yeah, so I mean, the statistics that you mentioned are staggering, and they're definitely scary. And I think you guys were circulating in an email. I think I got it from a compass agent of a big landlord called BLGG.
Yeah.
And I think normally their vacancy list was like 8 pages or something, and
now
it's only 100 pages, or something crazy like that. So it's really scary to see those statistics.
They've always had, and I don't know if anybody that works there is listening to this podcast, but BLDG has historically had high vacancy because they really push their rents to the top. They price them to the top. But yeah, they're a prime example. I mean, they have dozens of pages of vacancy now.
No, it's insane. And look, this is why the vacancies are starting to add up and manifest, because most landlords are trying to target their leases so that they expire in the spring and summer. You want like a June 30th expiration or a July 31st expiration or August 15th or latest, August 31st. So now they're really starting to pile up because, back in the early part of the pandemic, it's just spring and people are renewing because nobody assumed we'd still be sitting here even today. Back in May, we still didn't think, in August we're still going to be in the same situation. But our vacancies are starting to pile up. The official vacancy rates that's been reported now, I think, is 4%. I don't know what it is, and I don't know how they actually calculate it with, information's a lot more consolidated, but I still don't know how they calculate it. But, I'm watching my we always carried a very low vacancy rate because we really put a lot of weight on, like, for example, vacancy loss, like we use that as a really big metric in how we're doing our leases.
Explain the basics of how that works.
Well, I mean, a lot of landlords are stuck on numbers and gross rents. They're like, well, no, I'm not going to rent this apartment until I get 4,000. Like, I want 4,000, whatever. We're here paying attention to that vacancy, and a lot of, brokers do as well. But, if I'm going to sit vacant for a month or 2 months so I can get you 4,000, I just lost you 8,000, which, how much is that dropping that 4,000 a month? So we're really paying attention to those things, like the vacancy loss. So we really, get aggressive with, reducing price if we have to, things like that. But even in spite of what we're doing, and we're seeing our vacancy rate creep, way up. And, to go to the tenant question, how do you deal with difficult tenants?
Yeah.
Look, the most important part of any negotiation in any concept of life is understanding what position you're in, right? Who's got the upper end? Who has the lower hand? How do we need to spend it? And, for right now, with housing courts still being suspended, they just extended the eviction moratorium for another month into September. Landlords have to realize the position that they're in. And we're watching vacancy rates creep up. They're not reporting as much on price. We talk about incentives. We talk about vacancy rate, but we don't talk as much about price drops and rental reductions. But those are well on the way already. And, we talk about it, giving tenants reductions on new leases, to renew their lease. But on the concept of reductions, I mean, those are starting to creep up as well. And we're seeing many cases where apartments are being reduced anywhere from 5 all the way up to 25%.
Yeah. Well,
how do you deal with the difficult tenant?
Yeah.
Number one, recognize the position you're in. And one thing that frustrates me a lot is, the principle of the lease. And, we have a lot of owners, I'm not, going to negotiate with this tenant. I have a lease. If I have to sue him in court, I'm going to make sure I get every dollar of that lease. Or they'll have this, idea of, I got 4,000 for the apartment before. I'll give a little discount, $3,750, but I'm not renting the apartment out for less than $3,750. I'll let it sit vacant. And we have a lot of these owners, and they're operating more of the position of ego and principle, but unfortunately, that's not the market we're in right now. We've got to play ball with our tenant. Most important for you as a landlord is to keep the cash flow coming. Our common charge bills aren't going to stop. Our real estate tax bills aren't going to stop. Our insurance has to be paid. Even if your tenant's not paying rent, if they call me and say the AC is broken, we have to fix it. Like, we're not allowed to say, oh, you're not paying rent. Like, let me know when you want to pay the rent and I'll come fix your toilet. Like, a landlord can't take that position. So number one, adding humanity to the situation and understanding. Some people have been utterly destroyed by this crisis. I mean, imagine if you own a restaurant.
Yep.
Or you're a cab driver even.
Yep.
Or, the nail salon.
Any retail. Yeah.
Retail. I mean, we went to the dry cleaning yesterday around the corner for us. Like, I had 4 customers today. Normally I'd have 50 by this time. You don't need dry cleaning right now, right? Where am I going? Who am I trying to impress? You don't need to dry clean yourself.
Yeah.
Men's
Men's Warehouse went out of business.
Men's Warehouse. I mean, Zara is having problem. I mean, all the big fashion brands. Both my wife is in fashion, so I know a little more than the average Joe about fashion. But it used to be, Chanel was having, those the bigger brands, the expensive brands, Louis Vuitton, like, they were having some retraction in their businesses, and the ones that were doing best were like, ready to wear, like, they'd rip the design right off the runway and copy it at a cheaper price, like the Zara's and the H&M's and all these kind of guys, and they were doing great before. And now we're watching them close stores as well. And if Zara and H&M need to retract and downsize, I mean, that's really, that's scary news.
Very, very.
So we got to realize the position we're in, and we've got to play ball in ways that we wouldn't play ball before. We've got to be understanding, and look, some of our clients are understanding. So, and they're everyday people. They've also experienced severe hardship. And some landlords are, on yachts in Monaco right now, living the good life. So we've got to add humility to it. And we've got to understand, if things go south with our negotiation and our tenant decides he's not going to pay rent anymore because of it, because he's trying to squeeze us, there's not much the landlord can do. And, our clients say, do something.
How do you advise those landlords?
How do we advise those landlords?
How do you advise them? Or what do you tell them? Like, let's just say I'm your client. I live in Singapore, and I have a tenant that is now all of a sudden saying, I have due to the pandemic, I have trouble paying the rent, even though I might also be renting a $20,000 a month house in the Hamptons.
Look, we have that a lot. And, half the times when people are asking for reductions, you're like, you know what, I need a reduction because I unfortunately blew all your rent money on this beach house. Or, the one guy that stuck out the most is, I had a guy who called me from Bora Bora to tell me he doesn't feel like he should have to pay the rent because he's stuck in Bora Bora. He's trying to get a private flight out, but he's stuck there. But he doesn't want to pay the rent. I'm like, come on, you're representing everything wrong with humanity. Like, and this is the problem. This is what's causing the crisis.
They probably also drive a Ferrari, and they're trying to find.
No, exactly. No, we have all these stories, and then we gave another tenant a reduction. I need 20%. I'm not paying the rent unless you give me a 20% reduction. Oh. We had to bend, and then literally the next day he sends me an email. I know you're out in the Hamptons. You happen to know any available rentals right now? and it's like, are you serious? And you just want to go and like punch him in the face because you're like so angry. And look, I'm a professional landlord. My job, I'm a value add to the community because I don't have the emotion of the owner, right? I'm a third party. I can do it in a much more objective way without, all the frustration and anger that an owner would have. But even I just want to, like, I've never wanted to hurt people, and I'm not a violent person, but I've never wanted to hurt people so much in my life. But we've got to do it.
If I have a tenant like that, and I live in Singapore, right, and he's paying, let's just say, $15,000 a month, and now he wants to pay $8,000 or whatever, like, how would you, what would you say to me? How would you advise me based on the current political situation, economics, obviously, and what's happening with, like, courts?
So on that question, the tenant still has to pay the rent. So the saving grace is you're still obligated to pay the rent. And, that's something we always tell our landlords. There is a legal obligation to pay the rent. If we feel like we need to get it and you're willing to chase it, we'll probably get it. The question is, at what point, how much legal costs, and how much are we in the hole that we've got to chase?
Right.
So my advice to every landlord, and it's, in this crisis, we are all in this together. So it's not like there's some external factor happening only in Singapore that only is affecting that market. Landlords all across the globe are having the exact same issue. The circumstances here are the same basically as they are in China,
Yeah.
or anywhere else on the globe. I mean, everybody fled the cities, so socially distanced. The wealthy went to their second home somewhere. So we're all together. So my advice would be patient. If the offer sounds crazy, look, we have two choices. We either play ball so we can keep our cash flow going. I can get you as much money as I possibly can. I can pay your expenses. Maybe I'm going to get a reduction. The good news is, in my eyes, this is going to be a temporary situation. Maybe we take a hit for 6 months or a year, and things will go back to some relative level of normal. I mean, my advice is we're in a duck and cover situation. Let's do everything we can to protect ourselves and try to every extent possible to keep this out of court. I don't want you to pay legal fee. First of all, we can't sue right now.
You can't.
The housing court's not accepting any holdover, meaning your lease expired and you didn't move out, or any non-paid case. We can't sue. Without the support of the court, the landlord's hands are kind of tied. So we got to make a decision. Do I take a 20% reduction right now, just for the sake of making sure my tenant pays, I get them happy. The minute you give them a reduction, they finally start to pay again and everything is okay. Do I do that, or do I, take the gamble of I'll sue them when housing court opens and we'll see what happens? And, housing court for landlords, especially after last year when that fantastic legislation was passed, the Tenant Housing and Stability Act. Yeah, screw the landlords, landlords don't have bills, they don't have mortgages. Well, every landlord just drives a Ferrari and is, flying in private jets everywhere. They forget landlord, in a lot of cases, are also everyday people. This is their life savings. This was all the money in the world they had in this asset.
And the margins after taxes are like this,
Yeah, then we have taxes. Then you get a screwball tenant every now and again. They cost you a fortune.
We think everybody's Harry Helmsley and Richard the Frack.
I don't really get it. I mean, we legit have owners who the rental income goes to pay for the nursing home for the owner.
Yeah.
And if you don't pay your rent, you want to play games. He can't pay for his nursing home.
Yeah,
They'll throw him out. We're not going to say, oh, it's fine, we'll get it from you in a few months. They just tell you, come pick up your dad, and maybe you got to keep him at home. So your tenants have to understand that. But like I said, we've got to protect ourselves. And, and the gamble of you going to court is tough right now. Circumstances were hard for landlords before this. What's going to happen when housing courts do open up and we have hundreds of thousands of cases that have to be tried? I mean, like 25% of rent stabilized tenants alone didn't pay rent. I mean, that's what, 250,000 to 500,000 people?
It's a lot.
I mean, how can the courts keep up with this? And the gamble is how are judges going to rule on these cases where it's the same problem. There's no intricacy here.
No.
There's no special circumstance. I lost my job. I can't pay my rent. I refuse to leave. How are they going to rule on these cases?
All right. So let's go back to rent payments then. Under the portfolio of tenants that you represent, and these are not rent stabilized apartments, just for the audience, for your sake. These are not normal run-of-the-mill apartments. I mean, they're probably properties that, like I said, I address some of the buildings that he represents owners in. And obviously, there are obvious normal apartments in Manhattan too, 600 square foot, one bedrooms. I'm sure you manage. I don't know if you manage any studios. I'm sure you do.
No, we do. We have all levels.
Yeah, and you probably have modest under 1,000 square foot, one bedrooms in the Upper East Side. I'm sure. So tell me, out of the number of the people that you represent, I mean, did you have any people that just stopped paying rent altogether?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have people who haven't paid rent since March, and you can send them a letter yelling at them, basically saying pay the rent. But after that, you can't take the next step. And some are doing it because they're jerks, right? They have the money, they didn't lose any income, they just decided they're going to take advantage of the situation. Yeah. And then you have the other half who lost their job and they literally have nowhere to go. It's either this or shelter. They had no backup, they had no cushion, they have no job. The $600 extra a week isn't going to pay their bills. They have student debt, they have credit card bills, whatever. But I would say that on a portfolio basis, we probably have like a 15% default rate right now.
Wow,
which is astronomical. I mean, maybe
default listeners includes people that maybe behind in rent, but they're paying, or maybe they're paying partial. I mean, default can mean a host of things, not just paying $0 a month, just to clarify.
Correct, exactly. I mean, maybe you're only paying half the rent right now, but we have a 15% rate. And normally I have a handful I have maybe 4 or 5, legal cases that I'm handling for not paying the rent or holding over. Now I could probably have 40 cases of that.
Right.
If I were able to sue. I mean, it's astronomical, the amount of cases that we have to deal with. And the one reassuring thing is, for the most part, if you make a deal with the tenant, even if it's a little heavier than you'd want, like you're giving them a 20 or even 25% discount, in some cases we're willing to do it just to keep things going right now. And that will get the tenant to pay for the most part.
Yeah.
But my advice to landlords right now, try to renew the lease to the extent you can. Even if they're asking for what you think is a crazy reduction, really carefully weigh it. I remember a couple of months ago, we have an apartment at 58 West 58th Street, just south of the plaza. It's right across the street from the plaza. And the tenant was paying $8,500, and they came to us and said, look, we'll pay $6,500. And I remember even at the time, which was probably May, I thought, you guys are crazy. Take your stuff and get out right now. Like, y'all are insane. There is no way on earth that would happen. And now, like, I just want to call them, like, can you please stay? Like, no problem. No problem. We'll take it.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever. You want a month free too? Like, and I would say, if you have to throw your tenant a month free to renew, do it. If you've got to reduce rent for 20%, do it. I would try to do everything you can to avoid the vacancy, because vacancy, you are in the club with, as you said, about 22,000 other people right now.
22,477 as of today.
And who knows how accurate that is? I would venture it's probably higher. Like, what if there's a lot of brokers that still aren't showing. There's a lot of people who aren't, it's not vacant because, the tenant won't let you in, so it's not even on the market yet.
Correct.
Or it's, there's a lot of other circumstances. So I would say it's higher. I would do everything I could to protect myself against a vacancy. If you get a vacancy, we've got 22,000 friends that we're competing against. You're probably going to have to pay the broker fee. If you look at concessions,
100%, without a doubt.
Most people are paying the broker fee. You'd be foolish not to try and pay it. You're going to have a period of vacancy loss where your income is zero until you get somebody, and you're probably going to do a drastic rent discount anyway in many cases. However, there are exceptions. Apartments with terraces, we're not taking too big a hits on. Townhouses, we're not taking, anywhere that you can socially distance. I mean, we rented, with another firm a couple of weeks ago, we rented a $45,000 apartment.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a pool, with a separate entrance, which is appealing to everybody, but we're still doing these deals. But you got to be patient. You got to realize this is a short-lived crisis. When when there's an end to this, which I imagine it will be within the next year. I don't think it's too naive to say within the next year we will have some relative level of normalcy returning to us. Mm-hmm. We just got to, like I said, duck and cover and be patient this year.
You mentioned terraces, 440 76th Street, you have a 2-bedroom with a terrace there, but it does compete with Glenwood, doesn't it?
Yeah, and look, and that's, one of the things with competition. It's not what the individual landlords doing necessarily today. We've got to look at what our big landlords are doing. The Relateds, the Glenwoods, the BLDGs, the Manicherians, whoever else, like these big guys, they have to keep these, it's one thing if you're one landlord, but if you've got an entire building on the Upper West Side, like, ground, or Tribeca, ground zero for where the wealthy families live and are now at their, Hamptons or Connecticut residences or wherever, we've got to compete against those guys. And if I'm Glenwood, I can throw my tenants 2 months of free rent. You have the pockets and the stomach to do it. If I'm an individual unit owner and I need this income to pay the mortgage or, fund my life, like pay my bills, I can't afford to do these incentives. So it's created a lot of challenges. But I'm happy to report, 44076, we have a great apartment with the terrace. Believe it or not, we got a $100 increase this year on the apartment.
Wow.
The tenant's moving out. She lost her job. She can't pay. We said, look, we'll let you off the hook as long as we find someone to replace you. And she was paying 64, and we got that up to 65.
That's great. That's great. Well, listen, I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I just want to say on the last note with regards to rental payments, I represent about 275 to 300 owners individually myself. And they all, most of them own just one apartment. And some of them maybe own 1 or 2. They're all in co-op condos throughout Manhattan. And luckily, I have been blessed. And I guess this is, we all want to end on a positive note. I've been blessed where 100% of my tenants have paid. Now, They paid in terms of rent. They paid. Some of them may have negotiated a little bit as far as price point is concerned because of the reduction in building services, right? Because all the gyms are closed, no common areas. The kids' playrooms are definitely closed. Some of the buildings have pools and saunas and locker rooms. Those are all closed. So so the reduction in services. So they are trying to get call back and rent, but all of them have paid rent. And I think especially in New York, and your clients. Your tenants, my clients, the tenants that I have in my clients' properties, their intentions are good. They are professionals. They are highly educated. They have good intentions to follow the rules, and they want to be by the book. I would say most people. And I think that's one of the beauties of owning a piece of New York City, right? Is that the people that work in Manhattan, their focus is not to start trouble with their landlords. No, they want to get on with their lives. They want to move up in their lives. They want to produce. They want to make. They want to create. They want to build a dream. They want to succeed in life. And most people that have good intentions, and most people that have goals that want to get there, are well-intentioned to be good tenants. That's part, or be good citizens in the world. So, I would hope that while yes, some people may try to take advantage of the system, or maybe you have a little bit of some people, a small percentage of people that are in your homes are not paying rent or have trouble paying rent. Their intentions are still good, and they do want to make, good with a landlord eventually, or make a deal that makes sense for both parties.
No, it's true. And look, the good news is, a lot of landlords have gotten skittish and gun shy about renting the apartments out because of the overall climate right now. But like you said, the kind of person that's attracted to Manhattan, for the most part, is a motivated person. They're hardworking. They want to be, valuable members of society. They're not deadbeats looking to, be professional tenants. Our professional tenant category is very, and the professional tenants are, the ones that are just, trying to get one over on the landlord. So, the rate that we have of that is very, very, very small. Right. There's a few turkeys every now and then, but I would say everybody else is cooperative, and they want to pay the rent. Nobody wants this situation. Nobody wants their landlord, calling them every day. That's where the rent is, shaming them for not paying, asking to, rip apart their financial, current financial picture so we can determine what amount you should actually be paying if you're trying to get a discount. I mean, nobody actually wants this, especially at our level in the market. We do, gravitate towards, the luxury to ultra luxury markets. I mean, those are good people. For the most part, they want to do the right thing. Right. Sometimes they'll squeeze you a little bit because they want a deal and they see what's happening. And nobody wants to be the sucker, right? Nobody wants to overpay for an apartment, or nobody wants to, be the only one doing anything. But they are well-intentioned. They are, we've had a little more difficulty than sometimes with, showings because, as you mentioned, because of COVID. Not everybody wants, random, potential tenants traipsing through their apartment while they're there, for obvious reasons. But the good news in this case is, for the most part, we've had success, and without, having too many bad situations. And it's, again, a short-lived situation. It will, be okay soon. We just gotta, roll with the punches in the interim.
We'll eventually come out of it. Listen, I know you're a busy man, so I'm gonna let you go. Listeners, again, you can follow Dylan at Dylan, DYLAN, PICHULIK on Instagram. His website, again, is www.xl-rpm.com. If you have property, or if you're a broker, or you're listening to this and you have clients that own property that need property management, that's everything from basic repair work, a dishwasher, and dealing with the board and insurance and the managing agents and the superintendent of that high-rise. $2 million in insurance to fix a sink, right? That's New York City. So if you have a client that needs property management, whether it's, again, minor repair work, minor general contracting work, all the way up to you do rent collection, security deposits, you do insurance work, you do violations, you deal with tenants, communication.
Literally everything. There's only two items we don't do: the brokerage, which stays with the referring broker, and filing of personal income taxes. Literally, Excel does everything else. You sit back, relax, and we send you, hopefully, a check every month.
So you know where to reach Dylan now. Dylan, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming on. And next time, hopefully not a Zoom meeting, but an in-person meeting in our office.
Can't wait just to load up my taco bar again and push it around the city. Just, I never realized how much I would miss like a taco bar. But thank you so much for having me, and hopefully soon we'll get to meet face to face again.
All right, Doug. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
There's a food cart that sits directly in front of Radio City Music Hall, who formerly sells about 400 hot dogs a day. And now he's told a reporter that he only sells about 10 hot dogs a day. Right? We have 7,500 workers at an office building in 1271 6th Avenue. It's right by Radio City Music Hall, formerly known as the Time Life Building. It houses about 7,500 to 8,000 employees. And in that one building, the number of workers going in, they only counted about 500.